is Alicia Shapiro with AiNews.com, and welcome to another episode of our Driving Tomorrow Conversations with Industry Leaders, where we explore the latest developments and newest innovations in the world of artificial intelligence. Today, I'm excited to be speaking with Amit Patel, Senior Vice President at Consulting Solutions, one of the fastest growing IT workforce and consulting services providers in North America. Amit leads the company's national consulting practice, helping organizations build resilient, high performance technology environments. Consulting Solutions partners with enterprises across industries on technology strategy, cybersecurity, analytics, cloud modernization, and enterprise transformation, with a strong focus on empowering people and teams to work smarter and more securely as technology evolves. In today's conversation, we'll explore how AI is reshaping cybersecurity threats, why human error remains one of the most persistent vulnerability in enterprise security, and the actionable steps that organizations can take to prepare their workforce for AI-driven attacks in the coming years. So thank you for joining us today, Amit.
Alicia, I appreciate you having me on your show. I've seen a lot of segments, so thank you for
Oh,
having me.
oh, absolutely. That's cool. Yeah, it's great to have you here. I'm looking forward to our talk today.
Likewise.
Awesome. Well, to start us off, we're seeing AI rapidly accelerate both cybersecurity defenses and the sophistication of cyber attacks. How would you describe the current cyber threat landscape as AI becomes more deeply embedded on both sides of that equation?
Yeah, great question. And I think right now it's kind of like a little bit of a fascinating and honestly kind of like scary time as well, right?
Yeah.
Because yeah, I think the cybersecurity landscape, it feels like an arms race almost, right?
Yeah.
Where you've got defenders, you've got attackers, they're all using AI to try to outsmart each other as much as you possibly can. And so on the one hand, right, AI is helping security teams do some phenomenal things. We're able to detect threats faster. We're able to analyze billions of data points in seconds. We're predicting attacks before they even occur, which is phenomenal. And we're able to even respond quickly to those, even before us humans can actually even know that there's an attack going on. So it's
Yeah.
some phenomenal things going on in the landscape. But on the flip side of that coin, attackers, they have access to the same tools. So they're using AI to write some flawless phishing emails. And just a year ago, we could spot out a fake email pretty quickly, like
Mhm.
bad grammar, broken links, things like that. But nowadays, these phishing emails have gotten extremely sophisticated. They're generating these fake voice messages, these amazing deep fake videos as well
Mm.
that sound just like an executive in a company. And they're also leveraging AI to make emails sound like it's the actual person, their tone, the way they normally speak. They might reference a project that they've done. I mean, all sorts of things. And so I think it's getting a little bit scary from that point. And so I think there's issues on both sides there. It's that constant tug of war. I think, are we ever gonna fully get past that? I don't think so. As new tools come out, both sides are gonna have access to it. But I think that's why most organizations, you can't just rely on the technology. It's still that human element that plays a role. So I think, because again, even if you have the best tool in place, one distracted click or one moment of trust on a fake message, it opens up a massive potential breach to your organization. So
Right.
I think that's that difference maker right there.
Mhm. Like you said, when they can start impersonating the CEOs of companies with videos and emails, it gets really tough to discern if this is a legitimate email or whatever. And AI can write without spelling errors and things now. It is really tough. And I used to be able to tell my parents, oh, okay, if it's got mistakes or something, or that the email that it's coming from is not bankofamerica.com or whatever, then,
Right.
but now it's getting harder. And even the AI models, they're like trying to stop the bad guys by saying, oh, our models are not allowed to help write stuff for biohazard attacks and stuff, but they can still get around it somehow. So,
Oh yeah, because even like some, not to pick on Zoom by any means, but Zoom sometimes has difficult figuring out these deep fake videos, and that happens, right? And so it's going on. The attackers are just getting more and more sophisticated with everything that they have access to, and so and especially now with the amount of information that's out there about companies, about executives, leveraging social media and their behavior, their tone, the way they typically write emails. You could take all that information and attackers are able to replicate them to the T. And it's a
yeah,
little scary from that perspective.
it is. And this is kind of a good segue, as AI does enable more convincing phishing and impersonation attempts. What shifts are you seeing in how organizations need to defend themselves, and what challenges are still remaining?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. The AI is making impersonation and phishing definitely more convincing. I mean, that's
Mhm.
definitely happening. In the past, most companies relied really on the technical control, firewall, spam
Yeah.
filters, antivirus programs, things like that. And they're still critical by all
Mhm.
means, but attackers now, they're starting to target people's judgments. It's not just the systems themselves that are being attacked, but it's people's, just their well-being, their demeanor, the way they normally would respond to emails. And so that's what attackers are going after. It's that human element. And when emails look authentic, the voices sound so familiar. Again, I'm not saying I'm the smartest person ever, but I like to think that I'm a little bit above average, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. But these things, I've even been faked by some of these emails. And so I think that's where the issues are. And so I think the shift is really around that human-centered security. I think that's the big part of it that I think most organizations kind of need to take a look at as well. So focus on education, behavioral training, embedding those AI tools that can help employees make safer decisions. I think those are all big things. I think one kind of fatigue, if you will, that most people will go through is that employees are bombarded with alerts and policies and new tools. So it just can't be like, hey, don't click on this or don't do that, or the annual yearly training, the why behind the meeting. Have your employees understand the why, what it means for them, what it means for the organization, what it means for your fellow employees, your customers, your vendors, all of that, and how these actions will help protect everybody across the board. So I think that's kind of the big part of it.
Yeah. And you mentioned something there, the yearly training. Should organizations maybe be doing more frequent training, or are there any AI tools that can help spot these phishing attempts that
Yeah, that's a
organizations can implement?
no, I think that's a very, very fascinating question. I think I agree. I'm not a big fan of the yearly training because to me, the yearly trainings are, it's more of a compliance, not necessarily readiness, right?
Mhm.
It's, hey, we've got to get it done because we're either mandated or there's regulations. So we just have to do it. Think of this as like an IT security task only. And that's just checking the mark and calling it done. You're not really training your employees. You're not embedding those daily behaviors. I'm a big fan of the short segmented training. And there's actually, you're right, there's actually a lot of AI tools out there that will generate AI generated fake emails. So you can send them to your employees. And if they click on something that they're not supposed to, and it's not necessarily a blame game, but you can have a pop up to say, hey, FYI, this was a fake email, and here's what you did, and here's what to look out for next time. And so you're kind of embedding these long-term behaviors for them. So I'm more on the side of, hey, short training, frequent training rather than just a yearly thing.
It's more of a refresher than just once a year where you're going to forget it anyway.
Exactly, 100%. Absolutely.
And can you share an example of a company that was able to strengthen its security by focusing on the people through the training and education and maybe smarter guardrails as part of its defense strategy?
Yeah, and it's funny. I'll give you a simple but a really powerful example, and it's kind of related to this whole phishing stuff that we just spoke about. We
Mhm.
had a mid-sized financial services organization that we worked with, and they were really struggling with phishing emails. And they had the right tools in place. They had great email filters, firewalls, endpoint security, all that good stuff. Most organizations do. But their employees were still failing for those sophisticated scams. And especially some folks that just aren't tech savvy. So they don't know any better. They accidentally would click on something that they're not supposed to. So instead of rolling out the annual training, we work with them to figure out these behavioral learning training sessions. So these were like monthly phishing simulations that we ran with them. And these were true AI generated realistic messages. They actually mimicked internal emails. And so we looked at their old emails, we worked with them, we figured out we had some emails that came from their customers, their vendors, things like that. So they actually looked legitimate, very similar style and things like that. And so when they actually clicked on things that they weren't supposed to, they got those pop-ups. They had what was missed was more of an educational training session, which was
Mhm.
phenomenal from that perspective. And they are actually, and I'm trying to remember the exact numbers, but within about a 3-month time period, their click rate on those actual real phishing emails dropped by about 70%. And so
Wow.
It was huge, and it was just a behavioral change from that perspective, and so I think that worked out really well.
Yeah. And when they can understand the why behind it, like you mentioned earlier, it just makes more sense than just being told, hey, don't click on stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right on, absolutely.
And you've outlined four key pillars that help organizations strengthen their security in the AI driven threat landscape. Can you walk us through those pillars? And which one do you think companies are struggling the most with?
Yeah, to your point, there's four pillars I usually talk about: like behavioral, access governance controls, automated safety nets, and then the cultural piece. And so I'll start with the behavioral side. And again, it's true behavioral education. It's not just about awareness. Most companies still rely on those once a year online training that people just click through, they half listen. And so I think we need to move beyond that, right? We need to think again, short term, real world simulations that actually change people's habits. And how can you actually spot a deep fake or AI written scam? How can you actually know that this voice message that came from the CEO is not the actual voice message from the CEO?
Yeah.
It, and it's about the why behind the scene as well. So if they understand that, then I think that's a huge part of it. But again, continuous training, I think it's a huge aspect of things. The
Mhm.
second really is about access governance. So it's limiting exposure by controlling who has access to what. So
Okay.
don't give all your employees admin rights, for example, because one mistake can take down the whole system. And it's that zero trust architecture or the least privilege access. So restrict access just based on individual roles.
Mhm.
So make sure that people have just enough data access to do their jobs accurately and appropriately. And
Mhm.
again, so that one error or anything like that won't impact the entire system. It'll be kind of limited in scope. So I think that's huge. Third, I think is again about these automated safety nets or AI detection tools. Because even with training, people are going to still make mistakes. It's going to happen. We're all humans. Mistakes happen. There's a lot of great AI driven tools out there that will help guardrail and catch those errors in real time before they even potentially happen. I'm sure you heard a couple months ago there was a very well known publicly traded company whose were breached through one of their communication channels, and the hackers had gotten a hold of an employee's login credentials and they started downloading terabytes of data.
Gosh.
Obviously, that's an abnormal behavior for an employee. And if they had an AI tool in place, it would have automatically detected that. It would have said, hey, this is an abnormal behavior. Let's stop it right away and let's figure out what we need to do about that. And so they could have stopped the attack, maybe not completely, but at least more than what happened. And so I think a lot of these tools are needed, they're necessary. And a lot of these AI tools are getting more sophisticated for the employees, or at least help them out. It can automatically detect if an email is kind of looking off a little bit,
Yeah.
flag it appropriately before the user even opens it. And so I think there's a lot of tools out there that companies can deploy. And then I say finally, the fourth really that culture of cyber vigilance. And it starts top down. And I think, again, this is the hardest for most organizations because we've got to make cybersecurity everybody's responsibility, right? It's not just IT's problem, if you will. It's not, again, just a once a year compliance check mark. When people understand, again, the why behind the scenes, why are we doing this? Why do we have these security policies? They care more, they'll participate more, they'll do more from that perspective. So that's one of the hardest for most organizations to implement. They think of it sometimes as like a cost center because it is a cost center. It's not what's making the company money. But at the end of the day, if you can make it everybody's shared responsibility, I think it's a win-win from that perspective. But it is one of the hardest that we see across the board usually.
Oh, yeah. And it's not, like you said, it's not just security, it's also about the public's trust. You don't want anything bad to happen, or the public's going to lose trust in the company, and then that could lose money as well. So it's better to invest now in strengthening your cybersecurity and everything so that it doesn't happen.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Sure. If your customers, your vendors, your partners, if they also know that, hey, you are deeply embedded in cybersecurity, it's almost like a competitive advantage because so many third-party tools out there also are potential security breaches as well. And we've seen this countless of times that a third-party tool got hacked. They didn't know it for years, and their tool is being used at hundreds of Fortune 100 companies. And then all of a sudden, now that tool has access to all these companies, and it's a nightmare. And so it is a competitive advantage if you put cybersecurity on the forefront.
and do you think smaller business are A little bit more complacent in their security because they're thinking, oh, the enterprises are what's going to get hacked. My little business isn't going to.
That's funny. You're right. Most companies do think that way, but statistically, it's the mid-market companies that actually get hacked the most because
Wow.
hackers also know that they're probably not the ones investing in the right tools, or they probably have
Right.
employees that aren't updated on the most sophisticated techniques out there. And so,
Mhm.
unfortunately, like that mid-market or smaller organizations are the ones that are getting hacked. And I hate to say it like this, but it's making hackers' jobs easier, and it's also making it more efficient for them because they can send out, you know, thousands and thousands of these phishing campaigns to these
Wow.
small, mid-sized organizations in faster time than it took them for them to even write one email just a year or two ago. And they're able to do this more accurately and with speed. And so it's kind of scary from that perspective.
Oh, yeah. And where do you see organizations most at risk for falling behind? And what are the leading teams doing differently to stay ahead of the cybersecurity risks?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there's a clear difference between the laggards and the leaders. I think
Mhm.
the laggards tend to see cybersecurity as, again, it's just an IT project. It's
Yeah.
something that the security team will handle once a year, and it's more compliance rather than readiness. And so I think that's the laggards kind of mentality. The leaders, they're the ones treating cybersecurity as like a business function.
Mhm.
They involve HR, communications, finance, because they know that it's, one attack can affect everybody across the organization.
Yeah.
So they are involving everybody. They're also investing in these AI driven defenses early. They're not waiting for regulation to force them to do so. They're leveraging automation to handle a lot of those repetitive tasks, which I think is huge. And so, again, then their analysts can really focus on what matters at the end of the day. And so I think that's a big key. And again, I think it still comes down to culture. The leaders are the ones that are talking about security and almost in plain English. They're making it relatable. They're using real world analogies. I mean, as simple as like, hey, you wouldn't leave your front door open for a stranger to come in, right? So why would you open this attachment from this person you don't know? And things like that. But that can go a long way because
Mhm.
if people can relate to that message, if they can understand it in an everyday tone, everyday language, and understand the why behind it, I think that's the big part of it. So to me, it's not necessarily about budget that separates leaders and laggards. I think it's more of a mindset.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I would assume that some employees maybe at companies are like, ah, they'll fix it. They're good.
Yeah.
They're gonna fix it. And sometimes they can't.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. You're spot on.
Yeah. And what advice would you offer leaders who are just beginning to modernize their cybersecurity strategy for an AI driven threat environment?
Another good question. I think I would say I'm always a big fan of, and again, whether it's this or anything else, it's that KISS methodology, keep it simple and stupid. I would say start simple, but start human. So
Right.
you don't necessarily need the fanciest tool overnight. Invest in continuous training, those short, engaging, really relevant content. Start there. That's step one. Step two, get your access controls. Review who has permissions to what. Should this person have access to this type of data? And if not, then get that stuff under control from that perspective. You'd be surprised, Alicia, how many companies that we work with, how many former employees or contractors still have access to data and applications months after they've been gone from the organization. And it still happens to the Fortune 50 companies. I mean, you would think that even the largest organizations in the world, they're still kind of missing some of those gaps. So I would say that's step two. Step three, start layering in some of the smart automation tools out there. Use those tools to help your employees make smarter decisions. I think that is going to go a long way as well. And then again, lastly, focus on like a culture part of it. Talk about cybersecurity every day, reward good behavior, all those good things as well.
Yeah, that's such good advice. And looking ahead, as AI accelerates both the cyber defense and attack sophistications, do you think reducing the human driven security risk will get easier, harder, or maybe stay the same?
Yeah, I don't want to cop out on this answer, but I think it's going to get a little bit easier and harder at the same
Okay,
time because
that makes
one,
sense.
easier because again our tools are getting smarter. I think AI is going to continue to help detect anomalies faster. They're going to be able to analyze patterns that we would never see with our naked eye. We're going to be able to automate a lot of these heavy lifting. So
Mhm.
if an employee typically does X, Y, and Z, they look at this dashboard, these data sets, whatever, but now all of a sudden they start doing something different. AI should be able to automatically detect that, stop it right away or whatnot. And so I think those tools are just gonna get more sophisticated and help us out from that perspective. Harder also because again, the attackers are going to be using the same types of tools and techniques than they ever have. I think these phishing campaigns, these fake voices and fake websites they're just getting more and more
Yeah.
indistinguishable from the real thing. And it's a little scary from that perspective. So I think that's where the hard part comes in. I think the organizations that are going to succeed are the ones that kind of blend that human intuition with that AI precision. So think of it as like flying a modern plane. You've got the AI autopilot that handles all the routine stuff, but then you still have trained alert pilots that are there to make judgments and oversights and anything that they need to do, right? From a
Yeah.
last minute decision perspective. So I think if you can combine the two, I think that's what's really going to keep companies ahead of the attackers there.
Oh, yeah. That's so smart. And before we wrap up, I always love to ask, when you do step away from your work, what are some activities or hobbies that you are passionate about?
I like this one a lot. Honestly, when I try to step away from work, I love to unplug completely. I have 3 little girls, love spending time with them. We do a lot of, like, creative projects, explore new parks around, the Dallas-Fort Worth area that we live in. Their time takes a lot of my time, which I love. And then I also love to travel. I love to see different cultures, the way different people live, try the local cuisine, and just get a different perspective on things from different eyeballs, even outside of tech from that perspective.
That's fun. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Amit, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights on how AI is reshaping the cyber threat landscape and what organizations can do to build a more secure, human centered defense strategy. It's an important conversation, and I know our audience will find it incredibly valuable. So, thank you again for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. And for those of you who'd like to learn more about Consulting Solutions, you can visit their website at consultingsolutions.com. Keeping you connected to tomorrow. Today, this is Alicia with AiNews.com.